and welcome to Training Tuesday. We are here tonight to continue our series on office politics. So, there's several profiles we're going to go through tonight as we talk about office politics. And we went through a bunch, not last week, but the week before. We went through the first 5. This week we're going to go through another 5. And I'm just going to say, I am actually really glad that office politics is sort of the theme we've been dealing with this month. For those of you who have heard me talk about my current corporate role, it's fraught. It is fraught with office politics. There's a lot going on, and to be perfectly transparent, I have not been at my best in the last week. Was pretty good on my game 2 and 3 weeks ago, but for some reason last week wasn't fully on my office politics game, and I should have been, because I have been dealing with the sharks that are showing up in tonight's Training Tuesday. The profiles we're going to talk about tonight are profiles that I think are a little more dangerous than the ones we talked about last time. The ones we talked about last time were common ones. They're in every office environment. This one, to more or less extent, they're in most or all office environments, but you'll recognize some of these power players. This is when the office politics starts to get just a little more intense. You've got people who are a little more serious about it. So it's going to be fun. What we're going to talk about tonight is going to be fun, and I want you to really think. These are the political players that really make you pause and think about whether or not you want to play the game. And I think that's fair, whether or not you want to play the game. There's a certain level of office politics we all play and we have to play. We talked about that a few weeks ago, and we'll talk about it again before I close out the series. But there's another level of politics that you got to think about whether you want to play at this level or not. So, and I see that Jill is here. Hey, Jill, good evening. And Joyce is here. Yay! So, I'm going to dive into some of the profiles. I'm going to remind you first what we mean when we talk about office politics, because politics, as a refresher, because I was trying to simplify this definition a few weeks ago, office politics is one word that we use for the combination of influence and relationships that we build at work, and how we use those relationships. So influence, our ability to persuade others. Relationships, our connection to others. So office politics is how do we use our ability to persuade others and our connection to others to make things happen at work. And when you think about it that way, office politics are not a bad thing. And this is why I say they happen everywhere, in every environment. When people say to me, I don't work in a political environment, we don't have politics here. Yeah, you do. They just may not be intense, negative energy type politics. There are good office politics. Office politics are who gets to make the decision on the kind of coffee you have in the corporate kitchen and who influence that decision. It's all part of office politics, right? How do we leverage our relationships and our influence to make things happen? That's office politics. So you put the two together, and now when you put the two together, your ability to influence people, your relationships with people, and combine that with Kevin's relationship with people and his ability to influence, and Cindy's relationship with people and her ability to influence, right now it's getting kind of murky. So welcome to office politics. All right, last time we discussed the gossip, who's in every office, the tasker, the grumposaurus, the petty bureaucrat, and the power grabber. Those were the 5 profiles we discussed last time. Most of them have a fairly low to moderate EQ, right? Emotional quotient. We talked about their ability to kind of read the room, read other people, and take that into account. Most of them have a pretty low EQ in the political sandbox, and they end up having typically a moderate to low impact in the work environment. So this week's players, a few of them really take it up a notch or many notches. This week we're going to talk about the Kissa, the power aligner, the social shunner, the shallow or fragile ego, and the political animal, who's also a bit of a sociopath. So as always, as I am going through these profiles, if you recognize these profiles, the people in these profiles, if you've worked with them, if you are them, I'd love to hear your comments in the chat. I'd love to hear any questions you have about the profiles. I'm going to go through what we did last time, which is what drives these people, and what's the kind of impact they have, and how do you deal with them? What are some options for how you might deal with them? But I would love to hear which one of these are either this is how I play the game, or I know somebody who I work with somebody who plays this way. If you are joining for the first time, welcome to Training Tuesday. My name is Natalie Hahn, and I am your coach here at Dirty Girls Consulting, and you are at Training Tuesday, where every week we talk about different topics related to women and leadership and building our confidence and exercising those muscles around holding boundaries, using our voice, right? Moving forward in the world and creating the career that we want. And this month in October, we have been focusing on different aspects of office politics, what the game is, how to play the game, who we're playing with, all that good stuff. And we're not done yet. All right. So for the first profile, the kiss up. We all know the kiss up. We've all met a kiss up. We've all dealt with a kiss up. She's also sometimes referred to as the snake. Here's the deal with the kiss up. She spends her time and energy making sure that particular people with power like her. So her action is cultivating relationships with certain people, only the right people. She is not interested in making friends at the office with people who share her interests, right? There she has things in common with. She is interested in getting people in particular positions of power to like her because her driver is actually insecurity. Her driver is stability. She doesn't want to get fired. She doesn't want to get laid off. She wants to be safe in her role, so she cultivates relationships with people who she feels can give her that stability. So she's not out trying to climb the corporate ladder as much as she's trying to protect her space on it. EQ, low to moderate, like to be an effective kiss up, you have to kind of be able to read, what does the boss want? What makes the boss happy? What makes these power players happy so they like me, so that when the next round of layoffs come, I'm not part of that. So the impact they have, minimal. They're yes women, yes men, yes women. They do what they're told. So they don't lead, they do what they're told. So their impact really is on either whatever the boss wants or maintaining the status quo, because that's where they're safe. So kiss-ups don't worry about org charts in terms of who they are safe to be friends with. They only worry about org charts to figure out who's in a power position that can protect my position, so I'm going to go befriend them. She's sometimes called a brown noser, right? She's all about trying to understand how to make this person of power, appreciate what she brings to the table, what little bit she does. Now, here's the deal. Lots of bosses like a yes woman. They like a suck up because it strokes their ego. It makes them feel good and validated. And so that combination is not a very powerful one. And what I mean by that is if you've got somebody who's a suck up and you've got a boss who likes to be surrounded by the kiss ups, by the suck ups, by yes men, then you're not dealing with a very powerful combination, because the type of leaders who like to be surrounded by yes men are typically the narcissistic ones who are very insecure. Those ones aren't typically the big movers and shakers that you want to hitch your wagon to anyway. So just be conscious of the roles that are being played when you're looking at who's the kiss up and do I have to deal with them? Distinction. Moment of distinction. Kiss-ups are not the same as people who use their networks effectively. So you want to pay attention to the difference, because if you are building a relationship with people in power, it doesn't automatically make you a kiss up. The difference is the kiss up is trying to become liked in order to protect herself. Someone who is being smart or savvy about networking with people who are in powerful positions is doing it because they understand there's a trade here. When we network and when we use our network, we're doing it because we have something to offer and the other person has something to offer. So we're going to come together and say, hey, I can help you with this if you can help me with that. That is what networking is for. Establishing those connections, building that influence so that you can go get things done, go get bigger things done, cooler things done, launch an initiative, start a business, whatever it is. That's a very different move than aligning yourself, right? Kissing up to a person in power just so that you protect the little fiefdom you already have. So, if there is a kiss up in your world, how do you deal with it? You deal with the kiss up the same way that, well, actually, let me before I tell you how to deal with her, how many of you have, you dealing with a lot of kiss ups in your work environment? Do you have one or two? You're not dealing with them at all? I'm curious if we have a lot of them out there. Do I have a kiss up in my environment? I do. I have one kiss up on my team. I know who that person is. I know the role they play. So here's how you deal with a kiss up if you're working with one. First of all, if you can, you are better off treating the kiss up like you treat the gossip. Just avoid them. Just, if you don't have to really interact with them, if they don't really have a lot of influence over the kind of work you're doing or how you're doing your work and any of that, let them be in their corner doing their kissing up and protecting themselves. Let them do their thing. Because the only power she is seeking is that self-protection. So if you're not threatening her in any way, you're not in the way, she's not in your way, that's ideal. And you do the same thing with her that you do with the gossip, which is just when they get to that point where it's annoying, ingratiating, irritating, disruptive, you walk away. If, however, you are, for example, in competition with a kiss up, so say she's a peer and you're both applying for the same job or trying to tackle the same project, right? And now you're in competition, your best solution is to use her same tactic but use it more intelligently, which means you're not kissing up to the boss, you are networking. You are building your own relationship with the boss. You can do that in a way that is not a kiss up way. The kiss up way is just whatever I need to do to make you like me, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pander to your every opinion, to your every need, to your every whim. When you are developing a relationship with somebody in a position of power, you don't have to do it that way. You can come to them with your own ideas. You can come to them with a disagreement even and have a discussion and still establish a bond of trust and respect with that person. So when you find yourself on an even playing field with somebody who's a kiss up and they're relying on their kiss up skills to help them either stay in their position or advance their position, your best bet is to cultivate your own independent relationship with that person in power. And you leverage your actual skills and talent. You leverage who you actually are in terms of a contributor, the value you bring, the vision that you have. So literally being yourself. Bosses recognize kiss-ups. Even the narcissistic ones who want to be surrounded by yes men, they know they're surrounded by yes men. You're not that person. So you don't have to be that person. But for you to ensure that you have your own path and your own place, you do need to develop that relationship with the people who matter. So that's the kiss up. Power aligners. Power aligners are the dangerous version of the kiss up. Power aligners, also called slipstreamers, for a particular ploy that they make, and I'll tell you about that. Power aligners, the action they take is they align themselves to the company vision and the leader vision. So they're the ones saying, I love the vision of this company. The CEO has it right. I totally get where the CEO is going. I'm behind this 100%. They are the company cheerleaders 100% of the way. What drives them, though, is by aligning themselves with the people in power, with the mission, with the vision, with the story, by perpetuating the company line. They put themselves in this leadership tier so that they can take over. Their goal, unlike the kiss up, her only goal is to protect her space. The power aligner wants to usurp the throne. She wants to take over. So she gets in really good with the boss. She understands how the boss maneuvers in this environment. She mimics the boss maneuvers. Here's the slipstreaming, right? She mimics the boss's maneuvers. And then what happens? Slipstreaming is a term that you see in car racing, right? When you see cars slipstreaming, you've got a leader car going and you've got another car slipstreaming right behind it, following every move, mimicking every move. They're neck and neck. And then something happens and boom, the lead car is knocked out of the way, has a big fiery crash, and our slipstreamer has taken the lead. To be effective as a slipstreamer, you have to have a moderate to high EQ. You have to know what the boss is thinking, what they're doing, what's being championed in terms of culture or environment or initiative. You have to read the room a little bit. So they have a moderate to high EQ, and the impact they have is that they play the game, but they play the game with the end goal of succession. I'm here to win. I'm here to take over. So how we pay attention to the power aligners is by looking at where they are coming in to usurp power. Now, they do this in two ways. Before they usurp authority, before they overthrow the authority power, they have to make sure they themselves are completely aligned with the boss. So they might throw you under the bus. So let's just say, for example, you're in a meeting with a power aligner. Maybe it's a team meeting. You're in a team meeting, and you are a team that is dealing with customers. And the boss is there and the team is talking about the things that happened throughout the day, and you dealt with a customer call and the customer was really upset, yelling at you, abusive, swearing at you, whatever. And so you terminated the call. You did not finish supporting that customer, giving them what they needed because they just went down this path of being abusive. A power aligner would take that opportunity to say, but Natalie, we stand for supporting the customer no matter what. We stand for delivering on great service and giving the best service we can no matter what. You shouldn't have hung up on that customer. And your boss is going to nod their head and go, we do. That's one of our core values. We stand for service. And the more you defend yourself, the more you look like you're digging yourself in deeper, because you should have stuck it out with the customer. You should, right? So you end up in this catch-22, because now the boss is not nodding along with the power aligner statement that says, I'm aligning to our core values that we live with, right? So power aligners are smart and they're strategic, and they will throw you under the bus in a heartbeat if it aligns them more with positions of authority. Now keep in mind, though, that their end goal is to win. Their end goal is to be the boss. So you also have to remember that this person is the Marcus Brutus in the Julius Caesar play. All right? And real life. I say play because I'm thinking about Shakespeare, but the real life scenario of Julius Caesar was he took Marcus Brutus in as his protege and brought him into Roman politics, brought him into the Roman Senate, into Roman politics, taught him everything he knew. Brutus was, 25, 30 years younger than him, taught him everything he knew. And then, treated him and talked about him as his adoptive son in politics. Brutus was the one who led the charge of the senators surrounding Julius Caesar on the Senate steps on the 15th of March, where he got stabbed 23 times. So in the Shakespearean play, Julius Caesar, as he's dying on the steps, says, "Et tu, Brute," right? Says, "You too, Brutus, you're part of this too." Historically, the records say what he actually said was, "Brutus, my son, you did this." Which makes it a lot sadder, quite frankly, than "Et tu, Brute." But this is what I'm talking about, slipstreamers, power aligners, they can be dangerous. They will turn on you because their end goal is power. So how do you deal with her? How do you deal with a slipstreamer in your midst? If she's not in your direct line of sight and direct line of power, you don't. She's playing a political game. She's out there to win. If she's not doing anything unethical, leave her be. If you really want to play the game of politics, or she is in your sphere, she's messing with your projects, she's messing with your initiatives, your team, then you have to play her game. This is where I said, right, I told you this Training Tuesday, you have to really think about how much you want to play politics. Because the way to beat the power aligner or the slipstreamer is to play their game and do it better. You shouldn't. I do not recommend, how about that? I do not recommend direct confrontation, because the power aligner will take your direct confrontation and they will deflect, they will deny, they insinuate, they will gaslight. They will turn this into a no-win situation, because anything and everything they say is going to align to the company position. So they can't be wrong, right? Theoretically, if they hold the position that the company holds, well, I can't be wrong here because this is what the company values. So you have to play the game and plant the seeds. You have to build your own position, your own power aligning position, find your own allies, and plant the seeds of those moments where your slipstreamer is going to fall out. Because here's what power aligners do. They all do it. You almost have to wait for your moment. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. They will say, if we use that example of a customer service and the customer's yelling at you, they will say in the same sentence, we absolutely have to support our employees. We have to support our employees. Our employees are our greatest asset. And we have to remember the customer's always right, and that we have to give the customer what they need, and we have to deliver great service. They will absolutely talk out of both sides of their mouth in the same sentence. And you are the one who has to be on the alert to say, okay, but which is it? Because in protecting myself and protecting all employees from people who are abusing us on the phone, who are verbally abusive, who are mean, who are swearing at us, who are yelling, I had to terminate that conversation. I had to set the boundary that that is not okay to treat me or any other employee of this company. So is that the value, or is it the value that no matter what the customer says or does, we have to deliver great service? How do I deliver great service if I'm not being treated with respect? But you have to catch them in the moment talking out of both sides of their mouth, which means to play a game with a slipstreamer, you have to be vigilant. You have to know walking into the conversation, this is who you're dealing with and this is what you're looking for. So how many of you are dealing with slipstreamers? Because I am. I absolutely am. And it's exhausting. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of paying attention. And it takes a lot of playing the game. All right, our third profile, easy one. You know this one. The social shunner, also known as the mean girl. She's the mean girl. Actually, it's a mean girl clique. Typically when shunning is the power play, it's usually more than one person. It's usually a clique. So the mean girl clique, or the social shunner, what are they doing? They are doing exactly what it sounds like. They are freezing you out. They're ignoring you. They're not inviting you to meetings, right? They're doing all those things, and they're gaslighting you when you call them on it. Why do they do this? They do this because they don't want to lose status. Their little club or their little clique works perfectly exactly as it is. And if someone comes in as a disruptor, we have to stop that. So we shun them. EQ for this one is low to moderate. You don't have to have a high EQ to shun, to just say you're invading my territory, you're in my space, I don't like you, blah, right? That doesn't take a lot of EQ. Some of them are far more strategic about how they do the shunning, so they have more of a moderate EQ. But typically people with a high EQ, this is not a game they play. The impact that the shunners create is an unsafe work environment. it feels emotionally unsafe to be there. Because here's what happens, right? They stonewall you, they don't include you in meetings, they have conversations without you, and then when you call them on it, when you say, well, wait a minute, that affects my team, why did you do that without me? They're going to say, no, that's not what happened. That's not the conversation we had. I don't know why you weren't on that invite. You should have been on that invite. Not my fault. Somebody must have dropped it off, right? They deflect and they gaslight. It's all in you're misinterpreting this. It's all in your head. Nobody meant it that way. You're just being sensitive. The ultimate gaslighting, right? You're being too sensitive. Shunners will typically gang up on people who they perceive as a threat, but they also perceive as just weak enough to be victimized. So it's definitely a form of bullying. So think about it in terms of you're new to a job. You're new to the job, you've got new ideas you're bringing to the table, you're excited to get started, and there's the clique of women. Shunners are mostly women. That's actually statistically correct. I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but statistically, shunners are women. Not a mark in our favor, but it is a tool we use, right? This is like women in the silent treatment, right? Same thing. But new person comes in and she's got new ideas and she's got new things, and the leadership team seems to really love her, and we're going to shun her because she's the new girl and she's disrupting the game we've already got going on. She's making us look bad because she's doing all these new things and they're working. All kinds of reasons why this happens. But that's why we shun her. So we will do this by also telling inside jokes and not sharing the punchline. We will shun her by laughing at our own jokes, but not laughing at any comments that she makes. We will do this by, she shares a story about who she is, or she opens up and just says, geez, I just don't know how to find things here. I'm feeling really lost. And you give her the whole, what's wrong with you? What was that kind of look, right? No empathy. Warm and friendly and happy with each other, not with her. This is how we shun. So how you deal with her, if you need to deal with the mean girl group, your best way in is literally the weakest link. The shunning typically happens in groups. Like I said, it's typically women. If you go to each woman in that group individually to start to cultivate a relationship, you will quickly identify which one is the weakest link. There's always one. There's always one weakest link. The minute you know who that person is, you can start to develop a good, healthy working relationship with her, which is going to bleed into the others. Because what happens is, once she's not responding in that shunning way, the way she was before, the others in the group are going to notice. You might end up developing a good relationship with a second woman in that group, and suddenly you're not so bad to work with. In fact, you're kind of fun. In fact, maybe you know what you're doing. In fact, maybe they're thinking riding your coattails gets them further than riding the lead mean girl's coattails. Maybe. But you start with the weakest link. You break down those relationships so that people learn that not only are you actually nice, but that mean girl is actually kind of nice too. She's just scared. When you do that, then the person who's left standing as the lead shunner, the lead mean girl, genuinely just looks spiteful to everybody else because she is holding her ground, that you aren't to be talked to, that you aren't to be dealt with, and everybody else meanwhile has managed to develop a working relationship with you. So if you're dealing with mean girls, if you're dealing with shunning, go in for the weakest link. Fourth profile is the shallow ego. We know this one too. The shallow ego, or the fragile ego, is the person who's always looking for attention. They need to be the center of attention. They need to have all the kudos. They don't necessarily steal ideas as much as they just make a lot of noise so that people pay attention to them. Do you guys work with any shallow egos? People who just talk a big game but don't actually do a lot of stuff? I actually have 2 of these in my environment right now. Not on my team, thankfully. I don't think they're on my team. I do work with 2 people who are always talking about the great things they're doing and doing the, hey, look at me, look at me. They're very ego driven. They're very low EQ. They pay no attention to what anybody else is doing or how hard other people are working. They are just all about me, 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 me. Their impact is they make a lot of noise and very little actual impact because they don't do a lot of work. They don't typically have a ton of power. Even those who are in high powered positions don't typically actually use their power to get things done. They just use it to shout louder. So they talk about all these great things they're going to do, and they kind of hope the people underneath them go figure it out and get it done, because they're not going to. So when you see somebody with any bit of authority making a big deal about little things, you've got a shallow ego. If you see somebody that other people don't actually respect very much, but they're demanding their due respect because of their position, shallow ego. When you see someone who is trying to attract far more attention than their project is actually worth, or the impact their project is actually happening, shallow ego. Now here's the deal. The shallow ego players don't actually need power. They're not power hungry, they're attention hungry. They need to feel like they have power, but they don't actually need power. They need to be seen and validated. They need the show. They don't actually need to move the mountains. They just want to look like they're moving mountains. And that's what makes them shallow. They don't do much, but they yell a whole lot. So, how do you deal if you've got a shallow ego on your team or in your sphere? Again, if you don't have to, you don't. Shallow egos bring very little value to your political game. There's only one area where someone with a shallow ego could really be of value to you, and that is when you need a squeaky wheel. So, if you've got a project going on or you've got something you're trying to get done and you're up against a wall, you're having a hard time kind of getting the next step done, you can recruit a shallow ego to take on your same vision and initiative and drive by allowing them maybe to take a little credit for it even, right? Because that's what they're going to want to do. They want the attention to be on them. They're going to fix the problem by shouting it from the rooftops. And this is where you can use your help. If you're up against a roadblock and you need a squeaky wheel, go find yourself a shallow ego. If you're willing to let them take credit for all the shouting, as long as you're getting the job done and you own the overall project, why does it matter? So they could become part of your tribe of allies when you need noise. Don't expect them to do any actual work. do not expect them to return the favor. But that was the only situation I could think of where you could really use them. If you guys have shallow egos and you've used them in different ways, I'd love to hear that. But that was the one situation where I was like, okay, you can use their amplified voice to just make a lot of noise to gather attention. And then you still have to manage kind of the work stream underneath it to move forward. But they can be useful. That's the only place. The last profile is the most dangerous one and the most complex one. And this one combines some of the other profiles we talked about, but takes it to a new level. I call it the political animal. In psychology terms, they're called psychopaths. Sociopaths, sorry, they're sociopaths. Their action is to treat the work environment like a chessboard. It's a game. And may the best player win. So it's a game. Their drive is their ego. Again, very narcissistic. Their EQ is, let me put it this way. They can be very charming, and their charm can make them persuasive, but they have zero empathy for other people. Anyone else in the organization and on the team is literally a pawn on a chessboard to be moved. So from an EQ standpoint, like I want to classify that as low because there's no empathy, and empathy is one of the core markers. But the truth is they read enough in other people to manipulate them. They read enough to be persuasive, to be to have just enough charm. And their impact is that it's manipulation, it's control. Now, the interesting thing with the political animals, they also don't love to do a lot of work because they're all about the chessboard. They're not about the execution. So they don't get things done. They move people and things around, hoping that's what gets things done. They don't have a mission and a vision that they're passionate about. They will adopt a vision and a mission if it gets them where they want to go on the chessboard. But the whole game of chess isn't about what they believe. They're not a company with, they're not the leader with corporate responsibility. They're not a social movement. They will adopt those things if it helps them get more power. So I just want to be clear. You're following a person who pretends like they have the passion and they can talk the game, but they don't actually believe in it. So they're using a vision, they're using a mission, they're using a cultural belief to make things happen on their chessboard. The most dangerous political players, the most dangerous political animals and sociopaths you will come up against, especially in the work environment, is younger women. And look, I coach women. I am not here to put women down. I know I just said we're all the shunners too. But here's the reason why. There's one reason why a female political animal is more dangerous than a male political animal, and that is because of sex. It's because of sex. A female political animal will use her charms to her advantage more often and in more ways than her male counterpart, who might be equally young and attractive. And they are dangerous because the male makeup responds to that regardless. So it's something to keep in mind that your most dangerous political animals fit the profile of Elizabeth Holmes. Do you guys remember Elizabeth Holmes? Elizabeth Holmes made headlines a decade or so ago. Dropped out of Stanford at 19, founded this company called Theranos, a startup company that was a blood testing company. She was hailed in all the Silicon Valley media as she's the next Steve Jobs. This is revolutionary. Now here's what she sold. Elizabeth Holmes sold the vision and the story that she had a technology that with one drop of blood, we could perform 240 or more diagnostic tests. Everything from checking your cholesterol to genetic markers. Now, existing technology is that one vial of blood was required for every diagnostic test conducted. And she's saying, I can do away with that. I can do it in a drop. So the reaction was, holy cow. She was selling this as it's an automated process. It's fast. It's affordable. We're going to revolutionize healthcare with our way of testing blood. That was the vision of Theranos. Theranos at its peak was valued at $9 billion. Valued at $9 billion. Now here's the thing. For valuation is not the amount of cash in the company, okay? Valuation is when investors, private equity firms, and other people with money look at a company and say, if that company were to sell today, this is what it would be worth because of the people, the technology, and the potential it has to grow. And at its height, she was 30 years old, she was worth $9 billion. That company was worth $9 billion in the eyes of the investors who believed in her vision and her technology. The problem was her technology didn't work. It was a Wall Street Journal reporter who broke the story in 2015 that this didn't work. And if you watch there's Netflix specials and movies and other streaming services have all done movies of some kind on her story. And if you watch them, you will see that they talk about how she used her feminine charms to get money out of all these investors so that she herself was pocketing several $1 million in this whole process. And I'm going to read this because I love this so much, but this was the quote from Wired magazine. Writer Virginia Heffernan makes a really good point. She says about this whole Theranos scandal. We're not used to self-made young female oligarchs lying outrageously, fleecing the hell out of other billionaires, and conducting thunderous symphonies of global deception. Such a great sentence, right? We are not used to self-made young female oligarchs lying and scamming rich men, which is what she did. There's no American template for a powerful woman gone so gravely wrong. She's described by these men. She is described as hypnotic, and men repeatedly regarded her as an enchantress, a blonde cipher, who spun a mesmeric tale about a world historical blood-sucking widget. But in these stories, the flip side of Holmes was, and brace yourself, she was a bitch who crushed men who questioned her. When they interviewed the men who actually worked at the company, she bullied them. She threatened them. They were not to tell anybody their technology wasn't working, while she went out and wined and dined these billionaire investors and got them to throw more money her way. Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison for her work. When you have somebody who is using her personal charms and influence, remember what I said about office politics, our ability to influence combined with our relationships. That's the most dangerous level, when you take your ability to influence and you lay on the charm to influence, and then you make these powerful connections to go make things happen. Your integrity lies in, what do you make happen? How do you stand behind that as a leader? She built an organization valued at $9 billion, only to end up in jail. How do you work against, defeat the political animal? I tell you again, you have to ask yourself the question, do you want to play this game? Do any of you work with a political animal? I do. I have one. I have one very dangerous political animal in my current environment who plays this game. There's only one formula for matching up against the sociopath in the work environment, which is you have to do all the things they do. You have to make the connections. You have to be influential. You have to deliver. The one thing the political animal does not do is deliver actual results that matter. And that's the difference between you and a sociopath, is you're actually leading. You're actually doing the work. You're actually moving the mountains and getting things done. The difference between you and them is that you're building the relationships. You are establishing the connections. You are using your influence to help those people see your vision, follow your goals, help support you. And you are delivering concrete results that, and this is where your politics come in when you are against a political animal, you have to make sure that your results are attributed to you. Your job is not only to deliver great results, but it's to make sure that the people who matter understand you delivered those results. Those results would not have happened if it were not for you. That is part of the game you're playing. That is your extra chess piece that you have that they do not. They're not looking at the work actually being delivered, except that on the surface, it looks good. If you can deliver real tangible results and ensure that they are being appropriately attributed to you and your team, this is how you beat out the political animal. Is you actually give the leadership something they want and need. That's tangible and that's yours. It means playing the game, which can be exhausting if you do not enjoy it. It can be difficult because it's a long-term game. It's not one battle. It is a series of engagements with the political animal. It is a series of conversations with people in power who matter to play this game well and move yourself forward and ahead. So when you find yourself stuck in this kind of environment, in this situation, you really do have to ask yourself, is this a game I want to play? Is this a game that's worth playing to me, or do I have other options? Not all environments are political. Not all environments are this political. Not all environments have the sociopath level political animal. A lot of them do, but not all of them. And it really is a matter of where are you in the organization, where do you want to go, and how much do you need to bump up against this particular profile. So I know we went very long tonight, but those were the 5 profiles. These were far more complex than the ones we went through last time. So for tonight, you had the Kissa, the power aligner, the social shunner, the fragile ego, the shallow ego, and the political animal or the sociopath. Next week, we're going to talk about bullies. Bullying happens in many of those profiles, but bullies themselves are just a whole other category. I've talked about them before on Training Tuesdays. I have other trainings I can point you to. I want to look at next week. Maybe we take a slightly different approach, maybe find a fresh way to look at bullies in the office environment and how we manage that. Because bullies are the one profile that come up consistently at all tiers of an organization. So, thank you for sticking with me tonight. Tonight is one of those nights where Facebook is not showing me comments. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Last time it wasn't showing me so many comments either. But I hope you share with me which one of these profiles you've worked with, what you're doing to manage those profiles. If you want to have a conversation and want to work through how do I deal with this particular person in my office or this particular political landscape, absolutely drop a comment in the chat. Just say hi. No, don't say hi, because sometimes you guys all say hi. Say chat. If you want to have a chat and we want to dig into a particular political profile or situation that you're in, I am happy to offer you a free short coaching call where we can work through that one issue and get you to a next step that gets you to a better place. So just drop the word chat, I want to chat, in the comments, and we will take that action. I'll reach out to you and we'll schedule something to help you move a little bit further. In the meantime, enjoy the profiles. If you missed last time's, go to last time's training for the political profiles. Just reach out to me if you want a replay of last week's. I'm happy to drop that in for you as well. And we'll make sure you know everybody in the office who's playing the game, and that you are equipped to work with them. Thanks for joining me for Training Tuesday tonight. Next week, don't forget, we're going to talk about bullies. Drop the word chat if you'd like to have a conversation. Drop the word replay if you want last week's or the week before, the first 5 profiles. Have a fabulous night, and thank you for joining me, ladies.